These are hard-working people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
Now we're talking about doing something.
Boxing champion Mike Tyson is teaming up with the MAHA movement.
We're phasing out 8 common artificial food dyes.
He told us to fix it, and we are now fixing it.
Operation Stork Speed.
President Trump has directed me to find out what is causing the autism epidemic.
He is removing the CDC's recommendation for children and healthy pregnant women to get the COVID-19 vaccine.
Now we're talking about doing something. Doing something.
We've just signed 6 more waivers on SNAP.
The nation's biggest retailer embracing the MAHA movement.
You're now seeing reforms that have been discussed for 35 years. Your drug costs will be plummeting downward. It's called Most Favored Nation.
These are massive wins for the American people.
My sister's name was Denise. She died of obesity at 25. She had a heart attack. I was so fat and nasty. I would eat anything. I was like 345 pounds. A quart of ice cream every hour. I had so much self-hate when I was like that. I just wanted to kill myself. We're the most powerful country in the world, and we have the most obese, fudgy people. Something has to be done about processed food in this country.
Please welcome to the stage CEO of MAHA Holdings, Alex Hardy.
Hey everyone, I am Alex Hardy. I'm the CEO of MAHA Holdings, and welcome to the Eat Real Food Rally. Let's give it up one more time for the band Louisiana Surf Department. We told them to keep Austin weird, and they definitely delivered on that. Thank you all so much for coming to fill up the room today. It's really awesome to see. In fact, we might set the Guinness World Record for the most people ever in one room who actually read ingredient labels. Growing up, I was taught that every health problem could be solved with a pill, a shot, or a surgery. But after battling my own chronic disease for 7 years, I realized that Western medicine is a broken promise. Americans are fatter and sicker than ever, and we need help. Thankfully, we have a new treatment. Actually, it's a very old treatment. Real food. It is the best medicine. And we're here today to celebrate something historic. In January, our government finally flipped the food pyramid on its head. Fed up with guidelines that have been poisoning us for decades, Secretary Kennedy and his team rewrote the rules. The new guidance is simple: eat real food. Straightforward, yet revolutionary. This means better food in our schools, hospitals, and military bases. Better food for the brave men and women protecting our country, better food for patients, and better food for our children. Today, you're going to hear from 5 incredible leaders working hard to make America healthy again. First, you'll hear from Jason Karp, a health activist and the founder of Hue Chocolate. In 2024, Jason famously educated our own U.S. Senate that Fruit Loops are not actually healthy. Next, senior White House advisor Callie Means. Callie architected the new food pyramid and works tirelessly to end chronic disease. And as you know, Callie eats, sleeps, and tweets MAHA. You'll hear from Joe Gebbia Jr., Chief Design Officer of the United States and co-founder of Airbnb. Joe designed the new food pyramid and its iconic website, realfood.gov. Real food has never looked so good. We also have Texas Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz, a fierce friend of MAHA. She introduced the Healthy Babies Act to make sure that every American family has access to nutritious food for their children. And for our keynote, we have Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the wrecking ball to... He's the wrecking ball to the sick care system and the reason that we are all here. So, Austin, are you ready to take back your health? Then please join me in welcoming to the stage Jason Karp, founder of Hue Chocolate.
I lost one of my favorite and most special friends this month to colorectal cancer. His name was James Vanderbeek. He was one of the best men I've ever known. He was 48 years old and left behind 6 young children and an amazing wife. I'm not going to let this be just a sad story, because James's death is a mirror, and we need to look into it together and acknowledge that something is deeply wrong with our health care. We've never exercised more, never had more knowledge, never had more technology, never had more medications or procedures, and yet Americans have the worst physical and mental health in recorded human history. The more money and technology we throw at our health care, the worse it's become. I believe we were put on this earth for a reason. I believe that reason is stewardship and service, to love one another, to protect one another, to be stewards of this extraordinary creation, this soil, this water, this air, these bodies. This is not a political or religious belief. This is the deepest moral instruction humanity has ever received. God gave us a sacred duty: take care of each other. And in the last 100 years, in boardrooms, lobbying offices, and regulatory agencies, we decided that money and efficiency were more important than that duty. And that's when the system started to fail. I know what it feels like when the system fails your body. When I was 23, I started going blind. Doctors said my eye disease was incurable and that I'd be fully blind by the age of 30. I went looking for answers, and I found them in an ancient place: real food, whole, clean, unadulterated, the way God intended. 6 months later, I was healed. That experience broke me open and set me on what has become my life's mission. My family and I created Hue, which stands for human, on one simple conviction: food should only contain ingredients that are actually food. Nothing synthetic, nothing chemical, nothing your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize. We proved it could be done, and now we're doing it at scale with a national restaurant called True Food Kitchen. I do this because every person deserves to eat real food that honors the human body. No one should have to be an expert to avoid being poisoned. But James tried to do all the right things. He ate clean, he exercised, he filtered his water, he lived with intention. And it still got him. And although individual choices matter, it doesn't matter enough when the system is rigged against us, and we are paying for it with our lives. Colorectal cancer, a cancer of what we ingest, what we absorb, what we take into our bodies, is now the fastest growing and #1 cancer killer of men under 50. Cases in children have risen 500% in 1 generation. Young adults with this cancer are biologically 15 years older than their actual age. Their bodies are breaking down before their lives have actually begun. I sat before a Senate roundtable on chronic disease in 2024 and called this what it is: the Great American Poisoning. For 50 years, our government has allowed corporations to introduce thousands of untested chemicals into our food, chemicals banned in many other developed countries. because U.S. law says a chemical is safe until it's proven harmful. The food companies use their own experts to make that determination, and the government has allowed it. To put it bluntly, this country has been running the largest uncontrolled science experiment in human history on its own people, without their knowledge and without their consent. Last month, our new fearless leaders in charge of American health said something that sounded comically radical: eat real food. After decades of failed guidance, after fake processed food was blessed by agencies captured by the industries they were supposed to regulate, the government finally said what your grandmother knew, what every indigenous tradition knows. This was not a policy update. This was a confession. The government is finally admitting what we have known all along, that real food heals and fake food kills. And this fight isn't just political. It's not political. This is a spiritual war. It's not left against right. It's not red against blue. This is a war between those who honor creation and those who extract from it, between those who protect the bodies God gave us and those who profit from destroying them. We were given these bodies. We were given this soil. We were given this water and this air and these plants. Every wisdom tradition on earth teaches us the same thing, that creation is a sacred trust, that we are its stewards, not its owners, not its exploiters. So here is my ask to you. Stay in this fight. Read the labels. Demand better for your children. Support the companies doing it right. Hold the ones doing it wrong accountable. Show up at school board meetings and show up at the ballot box. And when they tell you everything is fine in moderation, when they call you neurotic, when they call you a conspiracy theorist, look them in the eye and say, I am not neurotic. I am awake. God bless you. God bless James Vanderbeek, and God bless America.
Please welcome White House Senior Advisor, Callie Means.
Thank you. There's going to be many ups and downs on this journey we're all on together, but there's one fact I can't get out of my head, and I know it's true. 20 years from now, if the robots haven't fully taken over, we are going to have much lower rates of chronic disease, and we are going to look back on today and what we're seeing in society today as a disgrace in American history. We are going to look back today as a disgrace in American history. We are going to have lower chronic disease rates in 20 years. Today, it's inexcusable. 4 out of 10 teens having prediabetes. 70% of American adults, by a recent study by Harvard, is actually close to obesity, not just overweight or obese, close to obesity based on new measurement. The fatty liver disease, autoimmune conditions, cancer, as we just heard about, these are all at record highs this year in America, the highest rates of pediatric chronic disease conditions of any society in human history. Something is going terribly wrong, but these rates are going to be reversed because of the energy in this room that have been channeled by the person who I believe, and I think we all believe, will go down in history as the singular figure in public health. This singular person who has channeled this energy into a movement, who has convinced a president of this movement, who has convinced a political system of this movement. He's backstage. Let's let him hear it. Robert F. Kennedy. Can we show him a round of applause, please? is inspiring to have watched this man and been able to have a seat to see what he's done. He is a hero. And he has held he runs the largest government department of any government ever. It's the largest budget in the United States, the largest budget of any government department in the world. He is the singular figure that every single day is fighting. And I've had the privilege of seeing this in the administration. And the thought I have every day when I watch him is that he is sitting at the table and he is advocating and he is the voice of American children, of the forgotten American children. And it is so clear to me that those children and the sick Americans and struggling Americans and the pain that's being felt in this country has not had a voice at the table. We have not had a voice at the table, and he is arguing. And I want to go through a couple examples, a couple of specific examples, because we talked about this in generalities, but here are a couple examples I've seen. Obviously, coming in, the food dyes have been a flashpoint. This is something that Bernie Sanders has talked about. This is something everyone's talked about, the food dyes. Why in America is 60% of children's food containing petroleum-based dyes that are neurotoxic, that are banned in every other country in the world? It makes no sense. Everyone's talked about this, but one of his first days in office, he calls on the food companies. And Bobby is no longer an advocate. He has power. And he's got the FDA commissioner behind him, and he's got the entire government behind him. And he said, you are going to get these damn dyes out of our food. We are going to do it the easy way or the hard way, but this is going to happen. And he connected with them, and he appealed to their moral conscience. He appealed to the fact that these dyes are not in the exact same formulations of products that are actually made in America with different ingredients, healthier ingredients, and they export them to other countries. He appealed to their conscience. He had the power behind him. But a couple weeks later, we made an announcement, and most major players in the U.S. food supply voluntarily committed to remove those food dyes. And it's just an example. Nobody has done that before. Nobody has channeled their political power to make those type of arguments. I remember early, probably a year before the election, my sister and I became very passionate about this. We started just going to states, talking to any lawmakers we could. And something that came up again and again was why, when we're so sick, do food stamps, which is a big program. It's 15% of Americans depend on SNAP. Why is the number one item soda? And why is the third most popular item potato chips? And why is the fourth most popular item on SNAP candy? Why are we subsidizing with a $120 billion annual program toxic food that is basically weapons of mass destruction for metabolic dysfunction that then is blowing up healthcare costs? And everyone I talked to, everyone Casey and I talked to in DC said, of course, but the soda lobby is too powerful. You're never getting that done. Well, we're 1 year into MAHA, and 25 states individually, including Texas, have taken soda and candy off of SNAP. A food bill that the brave legislators in Texas argued for, SB 25, was the single most lobbied bill in the state of Texas last year. And the governor and the brave lawmakers, some of whom are in this audience, told me that it was the single most popular reaction they heard from voters of any bill they passed this year. And they went again. They had CEOs of food companies flying on private jets by the jet load to Texas to lobby against this, and the governor signed that bill. And states around the country are taking soda and candy off. And I think a defining accomplishment this year, obviously, was the food pyramid. Now, obviously, there's cultural momentum to the government for the first time, literally the first time in American history, saying eat real food and don't eat ultra-processed food. Until this year, the U.S. government said ultra-processed food was the same health value as real food. It's a defiant statement. But the real power of this food pyramid and how it really represents Bobby's force is this pyramid is one of the single most important procurement documents in the United States. Hundreds of billions of dollars of procurement flow from this pyramid because these guidelines flow into military lunches, military meals. They flow into 45 million school meals a day. Head Start, they influence SNAP. There's hundreds of billions of dollars that the U.S. government spends, and I can tell this definitively from being in the White House.
This program, our Meals for Soldiers, our Meals for Children, our Meals for Mothers, they have been seen in Tell Bobby Kennedy as a piggy bank for junk food companies. 70% of school meals right now is ultra-processed food. We are destroying and poisoning our children's cells by design, because there's never been a person like Bobby Kennedy that had the moral clarity to tell the food lobbyists no, and we told them no. They came in and they argued that this was going to close down jobs in Texas. They literally argued this is going to close down soda plants. You can't cost jobs. And those arguments carried water. But Bobby Kennedy, with everyone here behind him, was able to tell them no and able to put a defiant stake in the ground to real food. And this is going to shift tens of billions of dollars this year away from junk food to American farmers. And we are going to see a demonstrable health impact for American children. There's going to be ups and downs, and there is zero question that this week was a down. I'm not going to gaslight or sugarcoat it. This glyphosate thing was extremely disappointing. Bobby's disappointed. And there's no message from me, the White House, or Bobby that you should not be letting your anger out. But I'll tell you, Bobby got on the phone. He's in charge of the NIH. He called Jay Bhattacharya. He's going to call him every day. We are going to research a bridge off these toxic chemicals that our farmers are unfortunately dependent on. We are going to put a stake. Bobby's been calling the top venture capitalists in the world. We are going to get a bridge off of these chemicals. And Bobby, there's going to be ups and downs. There's no question about that. But I think none of us could imagine 2 years ago where we are today. We are fighting every day, and we have to keep this movement going because it's changing the world. Thank you so much.
Chief Designer Officer of the United States and co-founder of Airbnb, Joe Gebbia Jr.
Science. All right, good evening, Austin. I've called this place home since 2020, and even with all the extra miles to DC these days, it's good to be back with the MAHA warriors who have inspired the movement. Tonight, we're celebrating real progress by Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Rollins, the state of Texas, and America is winning. Secretary Kennedy, Callie Means, Jason Karp, Mark Hyman, Congresswoman Dela Cruz, and many others, speaking with you here is like being on stage with the Beatles of health. Bobby's been fighting this fight since probably before more than half this crowd was born. So, Callie, you have walked out of the belly of the beast and brought the receipts. Me, I'm just the guy who made the graphics so good the whole system had to pay attention. When the president asked me to serve as chief design officer, Secretary Kennedy then asked me to design realfood.gov. Along with that, a bold new food pyramid. I thought, finally, a project where the brief is simple: help make America stop being sick. So I'm so proud of what we accomplished together in such a short period of time. And what I've learned from this is that there's people like Bobby and Secretary Rollins and others in DC who work so hard to craft these guidelines and these policies that design comes in and is able to find a way to express them that can captivate people and get their attention. So we took the old food pyramid, that sad, outdated triangle that looked like it was designed by a committee sponsored by Fruit Loops, and we completely flipped the script. Now the new iconic pyramid puts real food where it belongs, at the top. That's right, pasture-raised proteins, full-fat dairy, healthy fats. Let's hear it for healthy fats. That's right. Vibrant vegetables and fruits leading the way. And whole grains, they're still there, but they're where they've been put in their proper place at the bottom. And the best part, the brand new dietary guidelines have officially caught up. Now, say it loud and clear for every American family: eat real. Thank you. No more ultra-processed junk pretending to be nutrition. The warm reception has been incredible. Families are responding in droves. Kids destined for clearer minds and better focus. Parents with renewed energy instead of that 3 p.m. crash. Grandparents with more energy to keep up with the grandkids, including my own My own dad, who's here tonight and has been eating real food for a long, long time. MAHA isn't some future dream anymore. It's here, it's working, and it's growing stronger every single day thanks to all of you. And a few places are doing it better than right here in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott stepped up big time and signed the Make Texas Healthy Again package of bills right here in Austin. Yeah, way to go, Governor Abbott. Working hand in hand with Secretary Kennedy, we're talking real reforms, nutrition education in every classroom, clear warning labels on the worst additives, and getting junk food and sugary sodas out of free school meals and SNAP. Governor Abbott made it crystal clear Texas taxpayer dollars will no longer be used to fuel chronic disease. We've got local leaders who are leading initiatives to bring nearly 80% of Texas schools to serve food that actually grew or grazed right here in the Lone Star State. That's over $250 million of local beef, dairy, produce, and eggs going into cafeteria trays every year. Think about that. Pflugerville, Lubbock, San Antonio, right here in Austin. Kids eating steak and fresh broccoli from Texas ranchers and farmers. That's not a small pilot program. That's a full-blown movement. Let's hear it for the Texas farmers. So tonight, let's keep the momentum going. I want every one of you to go to realfood.gov, cook something real, something that once grazed or grew on Texas soil. Talk to your school boards, your neighbors, your local stores. Demand more of what commissioners and Governor Abbott are delivering. Real food, real results, and real hope for our kids. MAHA isn't just a slogan anymore. It's lunch trays filled with Texas pride. It's report cards with fewer trips to the doctor. It's a future where our children are strong enough to live the full, vibrant lives they deserve. So Texas, thank you for leading the nation with this change of courage and common sense. Secretary Kennedy, thank you, and Secretary Rollins for all of your tireless hard work in D.C. on behalf of MAHA, fighting every single day for the health of our kids and our country. So God bless our farmers and ranchers, the MAHA warriors here and across the nation, and to making the United States stronger, sharper, and finally, deliciously healthy again. Thank you very much.
U.S. Representative for Texas, 15th Congressional District, Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz.
Well, good evening, Austin, Texas. It is an honor for me to be here with you all today and with Secretary Kennedy here in the great city of Austin. We're in the heart of Texas, so it's only fitting that I start by telling you about my grandmother's legendary tamales. Ask anyone about her tamales, and she will tell you she made the absolute best ones in South Texas. Growing up around the holidays meant one thing above everything else, and that was watching my abuelita in the kitchen with masa in her hands, the smell of the delicious tamales filling the room as I entered. What a beautiful time Christmas was, God rest her soul. Every ingredient she used was fresh. Every step was done with love and with care. It was much more than just a tamale. It was much more than just food. It was the love that she had that passed down to multiple generations gathered at her home. That is the tradition that I want to carry forward with my children. and for yours. Our children deserve real food. Food made with fresh ingredients, raised and grown with care, from food that nourishes our body and sharpens our mind, gives them the energy to run, to play, to learn. Our children are not scientific experiments. They are our greatest treasure. And we know that fresh food brings families together like it brought mine together. And Secretary Kennedy is already delivering. Last month, he unveiled a new food pyramid for the first time in decades, one that puts real food back at the center where it belongs. That's why I introduced the Healthy Babies Act, to make sure that every mother, regardless of her income, has the freedom to feed her children real, wholesome food from day one. Because every child, because every child deserves to grow up strong. This movement is a grassroots call to invest in the health of our people, especially our youngest and most vulnerable. I am proud to be here tonight to stand with President Trump and with Secretary Kennedy and all of you in the building and helping America, where wellness is a national priority. And it is for that reason, it is my great honor to introduce a man, from a family that has given everything to this country, in war, in Congress, and in the Oval Office. A family that challenged us to ask what America can do for you. Ask not what America can do for you, but what you can do for our country. He carries that legacy, and he has devoted his life to fighting for the health of the American people. Please join me in giving a warm Texas welcome to Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr.
Thank you, Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz, and I also want to thank Alex Hardy, who's doing an amazing job at MAHA, and Jason Karp, and Joe Gebbia Jr., and Callie, and also Mark Hyman, who's backstage, who's played a critical role as advisor and counsel on the food pyramid and so many other things. And I want to thank all of you for your support, and I want to thank Texas for leading the country in MAHA legislation. And particularly Carrie Isaac, who's over here, who's the head of the MAHA caucus in the legislature, and who has fought why don't you stand up, Carrie, because you've done an amazing job. And she's led the fight on all of this extraordinary revenue of bills that Texas has passed. And, you know, we're seeing this MAHA legislation now in all the states, bell-to-bell legislation for your cell phones, CLE legislation that requires continuing CME, continuing medical education, which requires doctors to take nutrition courses in order to keep their state licenses. A lot of the states are doing that. And then better school lunches and getting bad ingredients like food dyes out of the school, all these really extraordinary pieces of legislation. And Callie was talking about, you know, when the food companies came to see us, and it actually wasn't that tough talking to them because they were so terrified about what was happening on the state level, because they didn't want 50 sets of rules for 50 different markets. and they said, we want to do what you tell us to do, so the states don't impose this jigsaw puzzle of regulatory frameworks around the country that we simply can't deal with having a national product and a national market. So it's the state legislation, it's what you do on the ground here that really empowers me to go and convene these corporations, and we've done it with so many other industries now. And they've been extraordinarily cooperative because they don't want to deal with you guys here at the grassroots. So thank you all very much. You know, I grew up with 11 brothers and sisters, and they were all very healthy. And I had 70 first cousins. And I never saw anybody with juvenile diabetes. I didn't know anybody, not my whole life. I never knew anybody. I never knew anybody with eczema. I never knew anybody with an autoimmune disease. I never knew anybody with autism. And I worked from when I was 8 years old every weekend for Special Olympics. And we didn't see kids like that. I worked 200 hours in the Wasatch State School for people with intellectual disabilities when I was in high school, and I never saw kids with autism. And now I see, you know, in the early 2000s, I started seeing all these damaged kids. And I know what a healthy child's supposed to look like. A child is not supposed to have autoimmune diseases. They're not supposed to be struggling with their health all the time. And I was astonished, you know, when I was a kid, I was 10 years old when my uncle was president. And the average pediatrician at that time would see one case of juvenile diabetes over a 40 or 50-year career. Now, 38% of teens are pre-diabetic or diabetic. So it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door. In 1970, they did a study, which was the biggest epidemiological study in history, looking to determine what the incidence of autism was. And everybody knew what autism looked like at that time. And it came up, it was the largest epidemiological study in history, and it was, you know, done by a bunch of universities, including the University of Wisconsin. And they came up with an incident rate of 0.8 in 10,000. That means less than 1 in 10,000. And today, it's 1 in every 31 kids. In California, it's 1 in every 19 kids, 1 in every 12.5 boys. So, and you can go through the list of autoimmune diseases and allergic diseases, food allergies. I never knew anybody with a food allergy. And I had all these cousins, I never knew anybody. Why do 5 of my 7 kids have allergies? Something is happening to our kids. And the bizarre thing to me is that we had all these pediatricians out there, and nobody was asking the question, and nobody else was seeming to notice it. And it was, to me, it was existential. What the most important role that a nation has in protecting its children. And here we were just watching this generations of children be damaged, and nobody was even talking about it. And, you know, I started talking about it in 2005, and I got censored because I was talking about big industries and silence for many, many years. And then, you know, I pray, I've talked about this, that I prayed every day for 19 years that God would put me in a place where I could end this chronic disease epidemic. And then in August, of 2024, God sent me Donald Trump. And it was really unexpected. But you know, the president has been amazing to me. You know, there was no agreement made. There was no quid pro quo. And in fact, the first time he asked me to be HHS secretary during the transition, I said, I don't think I really want to be HHS secretary because I didn't want to run CMS because it's just so huge. And I came back and I thought about it a while. I wanted to be maybe a health czar in the White House. And then I recognized that this was the place with 82,000 employees, the biggest budget of any department in history. It's 20% of the U.S. economy, and it would give me actual, real power to make these changes. And I went back to him, and he immediately said yes. And then he did everything that he promised, but more. He put me on his transition team. He allowed me to pick all of my agency heads, and that has never been done in history. The HHS secretary does not get to pick who's head of CDC, FDA, NIH, et cetera. And he let me choose all of those people. And then for the last year, he's let me go up against big pharma and big food and big insurance and the big hospitals and all of these other untouchables. And knowledge gaps, which is just regulatory malpractice. You know, nobody studied a lot of this stuff. And we came up with the food pyramid, which is basically, you know, we can summarize it in those 3 words: eat real food. And but it is going to change the food culture in this country. Number one, because we pay for so much food. USDA alone pays for $405 million a day for school lunches, for the Head Start program, for the WIC program, for food stamps, the SNAP program, for Indian Health Services food programs. And this is going to drive changes in those programs. So now, this is going to dictate what our children can be fed in all these programs. The military now is also beginning to use the food pyramid. Pete Hegseth has already brought in this incredible chef, Robert Irvine, a television chef, to redo the food for all the military. He's already in 5 bases. By the end of this month, he'll be in 20 bases, and they're going to do them all. But the bases, you know, the food that we feed our soldiers is just appalling. It is a national crime, and they don't eat it because it stinks. And they go and buy their food at the local fast food places. And fast food is not cheap. You know, a Big Mac meal costs $12 to $14. Oh, they're spending their meager paychecks on lousy food. And Robert Irvine has gone into these bases, and he's replaced it all with locally sourced fresh food. As it turns out, and there's now lines around the block, and nobody's going to the fast food anymore. The soldiers are so grateful for it. We don't release that, don't we, to feed them decent food. And what he's found out is that good food is not expensive, contrary to to popular belief. The military pays for that crappy food. It pays $18.50 a day for 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He's doing 3 meals of the highest quality food you can get for $10 a day. A salmon fillet, he told me this, a salmon fillet frozen costs $9, one unfrozen costs $6. And he said, you don't need to spend a penny more on food, you just need to be smarter about how you buy it. And this is true all over the country. There's a lot of good food in grocery stores that goes away. Most of the cheap cuts of meat are very inexpensive. If you buy a porterhouse steak or a steak, it is gonna set you back. You can buy liver or the cheaper cuts of steak that are very, very affordable. And it's virtually all the time more. Mark Hyman has just published a book in which part of it he has how to live on $10 a day, 3 meals a day of very, very high quality food. Can you guys not hear me the whole time I was speaking? You want me to start over? We okay? We'll see. So, Mark shows how you can eat on $10 a day and shows you how to cook it and how to shop. One of the problems, a big impediment that we have is that the schools, a lot of them have closed their kitchens. And so that is one of the things that we've got to help them fix. But the big problem now in our country is that everybody's forgotten how to cook. Nobody cooks anymore. And what we need to do in our agency and what we're talking about is getting people to go federal, some of the federal research teams that we have at ASPA, the other agencies to go out and actually just start teaching people how to cook, how to get them. They don't have cutlery, they don't have knives, they don't have cutting boards, they don't know how to shop. And people have to relearn this, and it's so critical. Jason talked about the spiritual malaise that we have in this country, the isolation that we feel, and it all comes, that spiritual warfare is designed to isolate each of us. That's why it's important to get rid of the cell phones in the schools and get kids talking again, having conversations. One of the starting points of that, of restoring ourselves spiritually in this country, is to start eating together and cooking together again, because that is a sacred ritual, and that since the beginning of human history, that has brought people together, and we need to start coming together again, and we need to put down the cell phones for a couple of hours and get together for a meal, for family meals. And so part of what we're going to do is to really encourage people Americans to start cooking again. And if you cook, you can eat a lot cheaper than going to a restaurant, even the fast food restaurants. And, we have, we've got, by the end of this year, all 9 petroleum-based synthetic food dyes will be gone. We've redone the GRAS standards, and that was the big problem. The GRAS is a phrase, a catchphrase that means generally recognized as safe. And when the FDA started regulating food ingredients back in 1958, they said, well, there's some ingredients that are so well known and safety is so well established, like salt and vinegar and yeast and these kind of things, that we shouldn't have to test them anew. So we'll make a loophole called GRAS, and if you're a well-established ingredient, you can take advantage of that. But the industry very quickly captured FDA, and they lied. That's why the government lied to us for 50 years about the food pyramid, telling us that that saturated fats were bad. and with no scientific evidence that was in any way definitive about that eating meats would raise the risk of heart attacks. They just were lying to us. And the GRAS standards was the biggest lie of all, because it allowed all of these companies to self-affirm, that's what they call it. It means you can add any ingredient to American food, and you don't have to show any studies. You just have to tell FDA, we studied it, and it's safe. That's all you have to do. So that's why we have 10,000 ingredients in our food. Europe has 400. The rest of them are illegal. In our country, we have 10,000, and we have the sickest kids in the world. And we've closed the loophole so that any new ingredient has to go through an approval process and has to have proof of safety. But we're also going back and making all of those companies show the data that they relied on. They're supposed to keep it in their headquarters. And we're going to ask Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, show us the safety data that show that it's okay for a teenage girl to drink an iced coffee with 115 grams of sugar in it. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. And then we're fixing the baby formula. The baby formula hasn't been tested. We're testing it for ingredients, but we're also testing it for the ingredients that are not listed, or PFASs, or pesticides, or heavy metals, because we know a lot of them have those in them. And those studies will be completed in April. So we will know in April what's in the baby formula. And we're also going back, it's been 30 years since the ingredients have been reviewed, the nutrient levels have been reviewed. And we're going to go back and do all that as well and make sure that baby formula is as close to mother's milk as it can possibly get. In the meantime, we've waived the import ban. That American mothers who are concerned about the quality of baby formula in this country can import it from Europe or Australia. And that was illegal before, and we've opened that up. And then, we're doing a lot of other stuff. One of the things I'm most excited about is that we've met with all the medical schools, and that next week, we're going to announce an agreement by the major medical schools to start teaching nutrition in the schools. I met initially when I first came in, I met with the medical schools. And I said to them, we want you to start teaching 40 hours of nutrition. And we actually developed a curriculum that's extraordinary, but we said, you don't have to use that. Use whatever you want. Teach whatever you want, but you need to teach nutrition. And they said, we can't do it because there's no nutrition questions on the GMAT, on the test. And the students won't take it. Won't take the medical, they won't take nutrition unless it's on the test. Oh, I called in all the testing companies, and I said, we want you to put it on the test. I said, we want 15% of that test to be nutrition questions. 80% of doctors say that they do not feel competent to offer nutrition advice. What do they do? What do they know? They know pharmacology. And most type 2 diabetes can be cured. You can lose the diagnosis from changing your diet. But the doctor hasn't been taught that. He's been taught that you have diabetes, you get a metformin, or now GLPs or something else. And so it's always a pill for every ill, instead of how do we prevent people, how do we keep our patients healthy? And so I met with the accreditors, and they didn't want to change anything, but we actually were able to have a very, clear conversation with them. And then we got them all in the same room, the medical schools, the accreditors, and the tests, and they, and we've met now with 100 medical schools. And so a large number of them are about to announce. Some of them didn't want to because they said it's a Trump program. And, you know, and this is true with everything. The SNAP programs, the SNAP waivers that we're doing. Callie said that 25 states have applied for a SNAP waiver. The SNAP waiver, why are we paying for soda and candy for the poorest 63 million kids in this country? We're giving them tax. If somebody wants to buy a Coke in this country, they ought to be able to do it. The taxpayer shouldn't have to fund it for children. And candy. And it's about junk food is about 18% of purchases for SNAP. And then 78% of them end up on Medicaid, and we end up paying for their diabetes. So we're giving them diabetes, and then we're paying for it. It made the whole system is insane. And you know, we're changing that now. But the states that have applied, with the exception of 2 states, are all red states. And they don't want to apply because they think it's caving into Trump. And what I keep telling them is there's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. You know, all of our kids. And, you know, if we're going to save our kids, people have to stop hating Donald Trump more than they love their children. So, we're fighting to change this, and we're going to do it very, very quickly. And we're going to start seeing changes in our medical bills very, very soon. And the amount that we're spending on chronic disease, we spend now, when I was a kid, we spent zero, during my uncle's administration, zero on chronic disease. Now we spend $4.3 trillion. And it's about 40% of every federal taxpayer dollar that you spend goes to health care. And 90% of that is to treat diet-induced chronic disease. And all the Republicans and Democrats fighting with each other about Obamacare, single payer, it's all like moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. There's no way that we're going to end this healthcare crisis that's bankrupting our country unless we fix the chronic disease epidemic. And it is existential right now. 77% of American teens cannot qualify for military service because they have a chronic disease or they've got obesity or other issues. And this is something that, you know, is, it's a crime against our kids. And you know, our generation now has a chance to fix it. We have a generational opportunity. And it's going to take us, you know, being in the government and a supportive Congress. And then it's going to take all of you on the state level who are fighting to make sure that our kids have the same chance that we had to grow up and experience the American dream. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. And now most of our kids only have one dream. And that's not good for our country. So let's give them back the American dream. Thank you all very much.
These are hard-working people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. who came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
Now we're talking about doing something.
Boxing champion Mike Tyson is teaming up with the MAHA movement.
We're phasing out 8 common artificial food dyes.
You told us to fix it, and we are now fixing it.
Operation Stork Speed.
President Trump has directed me to find out what is causing the autism epidemic.
He is removing the CDC's recommendation for children and healthy pregnant women to get the COVID-19 vaccine.
Now we're talking about doing something. Doing something. Doing something. Doing something.
We've just signed 6 more waivers on SNAP.
The nation's biggest retailer embracing the MAHA movement.
You're now seeing reforms that have been discussed for 35 years. Your drug costs will be plummeting downward. It's called Most Favored Nation.
These are massive wins for the American people.